when we shut down for COVID, everything was shut down. I couldn't be here at our training center. So I'm at home and I got a shop at home and it's just sitting in the corner. I said, you know what? I'll pull that out and do a budget build. Just something fun and quick. I figured, get a year in. Turned out not to be a budget build.
Hey, this is Drew with Classic Auto Insurance, and we're back here at a familiar spot for me. Back in 2016, we started working on a project with American Modern on an old 65 C10. And we spent 2 years in this facility building this truck up until about 2018, 2019, when we first unveiled it. And right around that time, COVID happened. And as we were finishing that truck, and Rick Drewry from American Modern, who really helped me on the 65 C10 project and really spearheaded it with both of our teams. The world shut down, Rick went home, and he had something in the back of his barn that he had always kind of had over a long period of time as something that he really wanted to do. We started to see that he was posting this project on Facebook, and I was like, man, is there a way that we can help him really kind of bring this project into the world, right? Put it on our YouTube channel or whatever the case may be. And so I think he was a few weeks into this project, and I called him and I said, hey, do you think this is something we could do with you where, you give us the footage or photos and maybe you tape some stuff? We can't be there with you. And he loved it. We went to American Modern and got it approved. And so back 2019, 2020, we started shooting, or Rick did, and we were editing that footage. So, a lot of time has passed. The world has changed over the last 5 years. Life got busy for Rick, life got busy for us, just like the rest of you. And so here we are back in Cincinnati at a familiar spot for us. And we wanted to sit down with Rick and really talk about how that project started and how he got to here.
Sadly, it starts about 45 years ago. My whole life is nothing but cars. I'm growing up through my teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, now 50s, almost 60s. It's all been about cars. The very first model car I built when I was a kid was a 1953 Chevy. Very first one. I don't know what happened to it. I wish I still had it, but it's the plastic model you put together. I ended up buying some spray paint and making it, if I remember right, I painted it gold. But then did all the details on the engine and all that stuff. So I had a passion for those just because, and it was by chance. I got the 53 Chevy model. I just wanted a model. And so I got the cheapest one on the shelf. My mom got it for me. So doing that, this car came available. It was at an auction, salvage auction in Chicago. And I paid $800 for the car. It was in a garage fire. So the roof was burnt, the dash was burnt and warped. I had to replace the dash in the car. But from midway up down, it was actually okay. But for $800, it was worth a shot, and I basically had it for like 12, 15 years, and it's just sitting in the corner of my shop. When we shut down for COVID, everything was shut down. I couldn't be here at our training center. So I'm at home and I got a shop at home and it's just sitting in the corner. I said, you know what? I'll pull that out and do a budget build. Just something fun and quick. I figured, get a year in. Turned out not to be a budget build. Yeah, which is typical. It's snowballed because I was going to build, I even thought about making a gasser out of it, and, something like that. And there was a lot of things that happened along the way that changed my mind. And it sounds stupid, but believe it or not, a little video game on my phone, racing, they had a 53 Chevy, 53 or 54 Chevy, and it was all done up with scallops and all that, and that's what sparked the idea to make the car the way it is. So, and I wanted a cruiser. I wanted to build something that I could drive. It's got air conditioning, power steering, but I wanted a little bit of fun, so I've got the 5-speed in there, so it's a T5 out of an 88 IROC-Z. So I had a lot of the stuff. I started with the car itself, and like I said, it was burnt. So it was, it needed a full restoration on the body. I go to pull the motor, and the motor was shot. It had water inside of it, and I guess from the fire department or whatever. I didn't know because I never started it. I just bought it, put it in the corner. So I could have rebuilt that engine, but it wasn't that good of an engine to build. But I had, and I've had it for a long time, I had a 4-bolt main 350 with Vortec heads, air gap intake, already had it. So I had the engine, I had the transmission, and then I had a bunch of other goodies, just stuff I do because I buy stuff when it's cheap. And then when I do something, because I'm always doing something, then I can apply it there. So I've got a stockpile of parts for what I don't know until I need them or use them. And that's what a lot of this car is. So it kept the money down a little bit. So I didn't have to go buy an engine. I rebuilt the engine from the ground up, but I did all of that. Transmission was fine, so I didn't have to do anything there. Rebuilt the carburetor because I have a bunch of the Holley 600s laying around. So just rebuilt that, and then the rest was body work, interior, and all that stuff. Leading into it, it was I had this vision. The 53 Chevy thing has always been, I like the 53s and 4s, actually anywhere from 49 to 54. I think those cars are not respected enough because I think they're very good cars. And I mean, they're full frame cars, they drive well. Now granted, they only came with a 6-cylinder. So it's not like the Tri-5s, 55, 67, where they had the V8s, but it's nothing to put a V8 in a 49 to 54. So I did mine a little different just because I went with the 5-speed stick, hydraulic clutch, and there were some hiccups to go along the way to get it to where I wanted it. So there's some modifications, but I'm happy with the outcome. To where I painted it, it was a little over a year. So all the body work, I had a lot of stuff to undo too. I found out the car was, I call it a hillbilly hot rod. So there was a lot of stuff done to it that was sketchy. So I had to undo a lot of stuff as I went. I also, there's some unique things that only I know about. I'll give you an example is the exhaust. It's a true dual exhaust all the way back. I had to literally take the mounts for the gas tank, move them over 6 inches so there's room for the exhaust on either side of the gas tank. I had to get rid of the spare tire tub, which was also in the way. So a lot of people have a hard time running dual exhaust out the back because of that. They'll put a fuel cell in the trunk, which I did not want. So I ended up getting a factory style tank. It's 3 gallons bigger than the factory one, but I was able to move it over and it looks factory that way. And then that's just a subtle thing. Nobody's gonna know that. You know, I do, but I also know I got the true exhaust, dual exhaust out the back, the way I wanted it. This style of car, it needed to have the chrome tips coming out the back. That's just, I didn't want to have, like Amy G, we got the Amy G and the truck. Amy G, they come out the side, the truck, they dump out by the rear underneath. You don't even see the exhaust. I wanted to see the exhaust on this one. Like I said, there's a bunch of little things that I did along the way, and those ideas didn't happen until I was working on it. You know, so I had no idea I just got to a certain point, wait a minute, that ain't gonna work. What do I gotta do to make it happen? So, and since I'm building it for myself, I had the freedom to do what I wanted. I wasn't building it for a customer or anything like that. I wanted to make it my way. There were several things that you keep in mind that the 49 through 54 isn't like the Tri-5 where parts are everywhere. They make aftermarket everything for a 55, 6, and 7 Chevy. So finding, I couldn't believe it. I like that was the other thing too, like the modification. Inside the inner fender wells, the batteries up there in the front, and there's this dent in the inner fender well that the battery sits and all that. Well, I put the battery in the trunk, but then that left that big dent. Well, I cut that out and made it look factory like it came that way. So, but I found one was, there was some rust in those inner fenders, and the problem was when I got the car, and this is really the reason I got rid of it, but got rid of the inner fender wells, they were big holes cut in them. The car was set up, even though it wasn't a gasser, the drivetrain was set up that way. It had the fender well headers that went through, they cut a hole, went through the inner fender wells down and into side pipes on the side. I didn't want that look. So now if I was going to keep it a gasser, yeah, that would have been fine. Well, it wasn't a gasser, but if I made it into a gasser, that exhaust would have been great. But I didn't want that. I wanted a cruiser, so I went to the exhaust manifolds, tucked up. The exhaust is literally this far from the floor. I got a bunch of heat shield stuff in there, all the way back, so you don't see the exhaust at all except for the tips coming out the back. And that was a goal of mine, because you see a lot of cars, Amy G even, you see the headers underneath and the exhaust and all that. I wanted to clean that up. Probably the biggest challenge that I fought with, setting up the engine and transmission, because it had a V8 in it, but it had some very poorly welded in mounts for it. It had a plate on the front, and the motor mounts were actually in front of the engine. The transmission mount was an existing cross member, and it was butchered up. So I had to actually re-weld that cross member up, drill new holes, and make it so it works right. And this is crazy too, because the original transmission cross member is riveted in, and if you pull the engine and transmission at the same time, it's not a big deal. But the way that's set in there, I can't drop the transmission and leave the engine in there. So if I ever have to do that, I plan on replacing that cross member with one that's a bolt in. But I didn't have to do it because I dropped it in together. But if I ever have to do that, or when I have to replace the clutch, which I'll probably burn a clutch up eventually, but then I'm going to just change that and either make or buy a cross member that I can bolt in its place. But fabricating the motor mounts too, you had to get them lined up right, and you had to get the depth right. I could have moved it forward, backward. I moved it as far back as I thought I could and still have enough room to get back there. I could have went probably 2 inches more, but then, I mean, it would have been almost touching the firewall. And then you can't get behind it and all that. So in order to get enough room, then that also, when it's forward, takes away the room in the front. So I had to go with a short water pump, couldn't go with the long. It was going to hit the radiator. And just measuring all that out before the car is built. So, because I kind of set all that up before I did body work to make sure everything is lined up the way it's supposed to be. But that was the hardest part, is getting that lined up. And then the rear suspension mounting, it had old traction bars, the slappers that go up there. Got rid of those. Then I did 3-inch drop in the back, as well as a 4-inch drop, 3-inch drop in the front, 2.5 in the back is what I did. That's why it's got just a slight rake on there, and had to get the lowering springs and all that. So getting everything set up, I didn't want to do air ride. That's just more to go wrong. And I mean, it would have been nice. It's also expensive, but you can get, and I also didn't want to go to a Mustang 2 front suspension and all that. That could have been easy, but this thing drives great with the factory style springs, control arms, and everything like that. And then the main thing that I did upgrade on that was converting it over to a rack and pinion steering. Instead of the manual box on the side, I went with a rack and pinion, used one out of a Chevy Cavalier, and do it. So fabricating all of this stuff to work, because you have touched every nut and bolt of the whole thing, and there's certain things you have to get done. You can't go in and try to redo this stuff after the car's built. It'd be a cluster to do it. So you've got to get it right beforehand. So putting it together, taking it apart, doing all this stuff 100 times was probably the biggest hurdle, because I spent months getting the engines and transmission set up and the steering set up the way it should be. Panned out. I mean, it works good, but that was the biggest hurdle. When I went to Cavalcade, I got it. Everything was running. I mean, everything was hooked up the way it was supposed to be. The only thing that hasn't been done is charging the AC, and we're in February, or January, so it didn't matter at that point. So my thing was, I wanted to get the car done, and it was, they're redoing the convention center downtown, so there was no Cavalcade this year. Right. So But last year's Cavalcade, I wanted to make there and just enter. I didn't care if I won. I didn't care. Just the fact of having a car in Cavalcade was my goal. That was it. I took Amy G, the Chevelle there, but it was as a business. You know, we're promoting American Modern and all that stuff, which is great. But I never had a personal car in Cavalcade, a World of Wheels type event. And that was a bucket list thing for me. So I knew when I went from it being a budget build to a higher end build, immediately I knew that's where I wanted to have the first place it went, displayed there. I wanted that. And then I didn't care if I went, my goal was just to get there, and just luck have it, I ended up winning first in my class, which was the 49 to 54 Chevys. So my kids loved it more than I did. They thought it was great, you know. So then I had my brother-in-law hanging out with me over the weekend and all that. So it was a good time. And I was told I was actually in the running for best overall engine bay because they have different awards, stuff like that. I was in the running for that. And that's compared to a bunch of guys that have a ton of money in chrome and all that stuff. You know me, I'm not a big chrome guy. You know, I don't mind a little bit of chrome here and there, but I like aluminum, I like black, I like fit and finish, and that's what I went for here, just like on, if you look at any of the cars, like even Amy G and the C10, there's very little chrome in there, and they look good. Yep. You know, so, you know, aluminum, I'm big on, brushed aluminum as well. So that was the thing. So that even the fact that I was even thought of that way was great. You know, and it's you don't always know how anybody's going to look at something and their reaction to it. They say, "Oh, I wouldn't have done that. Ooh, that looks like terrible," and all that stuff. It's just it helped the fact that there were a lot of people that liked the car. Yeah, if I didn't have that time during COVID, and that was funny, is I mean we're stuck at home. I'm out there in my shop with my laptop. I'm working with our adjusters, doing all that stuff, but then I'd spend an hour messing with that back and forth. That's what everybody did when they got stuck working from home. You know, instead of sitting in my recliner, you know, and having the TV on or whatever, I was in the shop, but I was still working. I'd probably get, on the time I was in from COVID, maybe I averaged 2 hours a day on it. Yeah. So, and then at that time, I really didn't work on it on the weekend that much. You know, a lot of times I was working on it at night, especially through the summer because it's so hot, you know, and it's very comfortable. So I was actually working during the day, and then come 6, 7 o'clock, we'd get dinner or whatever. Then I'd go out till about midnight and work on the car. You know, and it was better that way. I got more done that way. I could think clearly. Yeah, and then if you're doing all the work yourself, I don't have a group of people doing things for me. I don't own a shop. I've got my own shop at home. It's not a shop. It's, you know, it's my own personal shop. Sure. It's different. You know, so like I said, if it was a actual shop doing it, they're not going to wait that long. Yeah. You know, they're not going to have. But that's the luxury of it. I'll get to it when I get to it. You know, and. You know, I wanted to. It's just every time we tried to plan something to get to this point, something would pop up. Yeah. You know, so we had, here at American Modern, we had the big storms coming through. We had the fires out west. Even recently, the hurricanes with South Carolina and Florida and all that stuff. Everything got busy. Yep. You know, so that just made it. And the longer it sat, the less I thought about it. Sure. You know, now I'm ready. It was actually, I'm glad we finally did this because now I'm getting the bug back in me to get this thing on the road and drive. I mean, it hasn't changed. You know, it's just, it got paused for a while, and that happens. I think it's one of my favorite cars now that I built it.